Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Great to be with you. Midweek editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We are loaded up. We are 24 hours away from the yearbook release party at Hail Varsity Club up in La Vista. We invite you up there. We're on the air 4 to 6. The party gets kicking at 6 to 8. Some ex-Huskers going to be up there. Deontay Williams, DeMornay Pearson-L. Maybe we can get DeMornay some more eligibility for the punt return side of things. And Tommy Armstrong going to be up there as well. Aaron Sorensen, Greg Smith, Mike Babcock. And just so we so happen to have two of those guys on today, we'll check in with Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock, in about 20 minutes. In hour two, we'll spend some recruiting time with Greg Smith to start us off. And then Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. I was traveling back Monday, and we need to do a Monday with Charlie on a Wednesday. Been a heavy June theme with that.
How about this? Mr. Husker Football himself, Mike Babcock, already waiting in the green room.
Is he really?
It's all.
He's ready on the StreamYard because we'll be streaming Babbers.
He just breathes Husker football. He heard we were going to be talking Husker football for 20 minutes before he was coming on. He said, you know what? You got nothing better to do.
I tell them I listen. Let me prove it. It was funny. We're just strolling through one of the iconic accounts is the Shooter McGavin account. And I just laughing out loud, and I had to quiz Elijah because what they have is the end scene from Shawshank Redemption. And it's the scene where Red is carving in his name, Red, where Brooks had signed his name in before Brooks said goodbye to this world. And it's got Brooks Koepka's face on Morgan Freeman's body in Shawshank. And then it's got it cuts to the end of the movie where, you know, when Red jumps bail, takes the bus down to Mexico, say Wataneo, to find his dear friend Andy Dufresne. It's got Andy Dufresne there sending the boat down, but it's got Phil Mickelson's face on it. I tried to describe it the best I could. I retweeted it at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt's where you find my Twitter, at Elijah Herbel for it's Herbal Essence is Elijah's Twitter handle. And you can always email Chris at HailVarsity.com. But that made me laugh. The Tony Romo doing twerks tweet from our Barstool friends, Big Cat, yesterday was hilarious. Tony Romo is doing yoga stuff on all fours at the amateur qualifier while some guy's trying to putt yesterday. And just things that make you laugh on social media. No laughing matter, Nebraska's turnover problems. Big story in 24/7 on that. You have the future projections, future power rankings are out for ESPN college football. Who is their top 25 3 years? We'll dive into that and always take your phone calls. You want to jump in that way at 466-3776, 466-3776. Toll free 800-825-5865. But just to recap, a reminder to you with the Hail Varsity Yearbook drop. The cover is Garrett Nelson. It's fantastic. Your college football Bible, if you're a Nebraska fan, will be available for you when you go up to the Hail Varsity Club and get locked in and come see us tomorrow from 4 to 8 if you want to see the radio show, 6 to 8 for the rest of the celebration, food and drinks. Come hungry, come thirsty. And if you want some former Husker autographs, that's there as well. So it's really cool. Your chance to get up there and can log on and check things out, hailvarsity.com. club.com as well, just to find out and kind of scout out the menu, the drink specials. It's really awesome. It's just right by the Embassy Suites as you come off of 680 in La Vista. So let's dive in, Elijah, to Nebraska's problems, right? What has ailed Nebraska football in the Frost era? I know Tom Fornelli is also out with a sharp object, not just with some of his tweets, and that's all good, man. I mean, the guy has a right to an opinion. You just are tired of hearing about it. It seems more like a pile-on at this point, but facts are facts until you change that conversation if you're Nebraska and get some wins. But he's like, to Fornelli, what have you seen the last, he said, 8 years of Nebraska football to give you any optimism? And I'll say this, there's been some moments of optimism, but there's not been enough moments of consistency. And part of that problem has been the one area Nebraska's been consistent in, and that's turning the football over.
Well, see, I'm glad we're going to the side of what in the last 8 years has shown you optimism as opposed to what's gone wrong over the last 8 years, because I don't think we have 6 hours to get through everything. So I think we got to stick with the optimism side. 'Cause, I mean, how many things you talk about that have gone wrong? Turnovers, special teams, one-score games, the fourth quarter just in general. In almost every single game, the fourth quarter has gone wrong. Recruiting the wrong guys entering the transfer portal, guys entering the transfer portal.
You're putting a I need 7 shots of Jack Daniels list together. That's what you're doing.
That's what it feels like. It's still crazy because I still sit here in June of 2022,
and you're like, hey, hell yeah, they can win 9.
I mean, did you see how many close games they had last year? It's out there. And that's what's worrisome to me, because I have to sit back and go, am I talking crazy here, or was there actually enough optimism from last season alone, despite the worst record over the past 8 years being last year? It also felt like the season that had the most optimism. So I sit here, and it's hard to balance those two completely different things I saw last year.
It's two ends of the spectrum, and here's my big question, right? And quarterback, right? And there's so much uncertainty with the offensive line. You have every right to be concerned. But as Lou Brown once said in Major League, I think he's due. Right? Isn't Nebraska due to have good offensive line play? I didn't think that'd ever be a topic of conversation. But are you going to get some love from the football gods and have a healthy left tackle that's young that can anchor that spot for years to come? That's your ask. That's your need. Are you going to figure out right tackle? Is that a Ben Hart? Is that an Okie State transfer? Is that Turner Corcoran? Do you solve the center problem? I think they got enough bodies for guard. They'll be okay. I hope your boy Bando wins a job. I mean, he's been grinding for 6 years. But I also like Kevin Williams. I like Newelly. I love his aggressiveness. I like his footwork. I mean, so is Hickson the guy at center? Is Piper an option? I mean, you've got some in-state kids that you want to see do well, but they need to have bounce-back seasons. And with Ben Hart, man, I mean, he's super athletic. He's a wrestler. The aggressiveness thing is the word on the street anyway that needs to get turned up. And then you get into turnovers. I mean, it's touchdowns and it's turnovers. And it's been turnovers at the quarterback spot. Do you just get good enough quarterback play to, A, be able to hand off for 215 a game? You throw for another 250. You limit the turnovers to, at worst, 2 a game, praying that there are most games you go 0 or 1, and for sure you don't go minus in a ball game. I mean, those are all things that got to come together because you have talented players, you have talented coaches, you have sound game plans, you have a lot of energy. You've got a group of kids that are sick of being home for the holidays. I mean, the motivation's there. You've gone out and killed it in the portal. You've got seemingly enough good dudes that are holdovers that are back to set that culture and have the new guys adopt and adapt to the way you do things in Lincoln. What they're bringing is playmaking and, in some instances, traits from a winning culture.
But to throw some cold water on this, saying
it's hot out.
Saying this offensive line is due, or this offense is due, or this team is due, is like you got Mario Mendoza at the plate with runners in scoring position. Yeah, he's been in the majors for a long time, but they call it the Mendoza line for a reason. He's a 200 hitter. He may have gone 0 for 11 in his last 11 at-bats, but he's still a career 200 hitter. And sure, he's due, but what's he due for? He's due to make contact at the plate this time?
He's due to go 2 for 10. Okay? 2 for 10 and 3 for 10 gets you to the Hall of Fame. Big difference in that one hit.
Yeah, the 2 for 10 gets you a line named after you. 3 for 10 gets you Hall of Fame, which is it's crazy the difference there. But that's what I feel like this conversation is like, saying, yeah, the offense line is due to have a better season. They're due to get back. Sure, they're due to get back, but is 1 out of every 10 seasons or 2 out of every 10 seasons being a good offense line, is that even good enough?
You have enough guys here that have been in the program long enough that they're not young anymore. And I'm talking the Pipers and the Ben Harts and the Hicksons, right? And they'll either be complimentary backup guys that go in, or they catch fire and go win a job. And they've got a new position coach to go learn from, adapt to his ways, adapt to the Whipple way, and maybe what they're going to be asked to do suits their skill set better.
Yeah, and that was kind of what we were saying on Saturday with Kranek jumped in and said, well, have we not been telling them to fire off the ball before? So we've been hearing so much from the offensive line, and we laugh, but there is a legitimate...
You know more. You know it better than most because, I mean, you played it.
There's a legitimate argument to that of... Yeah, I mean, there is a different kind of... firing off the ball is a tenet of offensive line play, but there's a different kind of firing off the ball you do in a zone blocking scheme compared to a power blocking scheme or counter blocking scheme or what have you. Whenever you are trying to get that ball that guy 2-3 yards off the ball and break off to a linebacker, as opposed to you take 2 steps and kind of take him where he wants to go and see where the hole opens up. It is a completely different style of firing off the ball, and that is the question for this year. Is that more conducive to the kinds of guys they have in the room and the kinds of strength and conditioning these guys have been doing in the offseason? Well,
Chris Felica, College Game Day, the Bear, got on Twitter and reminded the many wearing red and white since 2018, 5-18 in games decided by 7. But this is it, minus 20 in turnover margin in those games. 0-7 last year with a minus 8 TO margin. I mean, the TO number absolutely bit you against Purdue. The TO number bit you against Illinois. The TO number, where else am I going? Michigan, for God's sake. Oh, especially that final drive where it's the fumble. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska's defense isn't always giving up sudden change scores. I mean, you did against Sparty, right, with that flea flicker. But it's been the turnover that's been the backbreaker that allows someone to get breath.
Well, and then, I mean, I feel like you can even add into that number the failed 3rd and short conversions or 4th and short conversions. Whenever you add those in, or a red zone trip that comes up empty. I mean, all those really factor into turnovers whenever you say, oh, it's 3rd and 1 from the 25-yard line, you can't pick it up, and now you got to
miss a field goal.
Now I send out your field goal kicker with a blindfold and a cigarette. Like, hope he knocks it through. I mean, that also, even though it's not going to go down the stat book as a turnover, that counts as a turnover too. And whenever you add those in, you're looking at probably 30, 35 quote unquote turnovers or change of possessions where you should have had points, you should have had something better, and you can't get those drives completed. I mean, it all factors into what we're talking about here of why we see hope for this team in 2022, despite all these things that would tell us otherwise.
Well, think about that. Split up the minus 20. Instead of losing a possession, split half of them down the line, 10 of the 20, you at least get 3. Split half of them down the line, you at least get 7. I mean, there's points in one-score games we're talking about, where it is just a position. Vic chimes in from Denver. There's no such thing as doing football. This isn't coin flipping. What else do you have to say, Vic? they have to earn it. Yes, but you earn it by being in the program a while, getting comfortable, and then go winning a job. You totally right, Vic, about earning it.
And this goes back to
what I'm saying. Eventually, you're going to bring players in that gel and are good.
And this goes back to what Spencer Long was saying yesterday, where he said you have to trust your process and keep the faith, because in the Big Ten, as a young guy, you're going to take your lumps. Are you going to have some successes? Yeah, sure. But, I mean, I even look back to Searles, a guy who had a very solid NFL career, and he had to get marched out there against Von Miller against Texas A&M. And while he did hold up well, there were some plays where Von Miller really took him to the cleaners. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. You take your lumps.
We're going to send this audio to Searles as he's in Minneapolis for a bachelor party.
But you take your you take your lumps there, and you just got to keep the faith and say, yeah, that dude was better than me today, but I know in 2 years I'm going to be better than those other guys that are lined up against me. Or even later this year, I'm going to take things from this game and learn and get better. And can the offensive line do that this year? Can some of the younger guys on the defensive front seven do that this year? That's the question.
Well, you outgain somebody, you should win the ball game. You go even or plus on the turnover margin, you should win the ball game. But gift wrapping is not good before Christmas or the holiday season. And too many times in the Frost tenure, a lot of it's been gift wrapped with those turnovers. Mike Babcock is in. We'll chat with Babbers next. It's Hail Varsity on a Wednesday. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Calling all Storm Chasers fans. A team you never get to see is making their way to Werner Park June 7th through the 12th, and that's the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. It's the first meeting between the two franchises, and there's plenty going on that week. June 9th is the Chasers Community Celebration for Pride Night, presented by PayPal. June 10th is What If Night, where the Storm Chasers will change their name to the Hogs. A little backstory, that was a previous Omaha team and was a potential name change when the franchise was looking to rebrand. It's a battle of pigs versus hogs. You can't have a name change without new jerseys too. Specialty jerseys will be worn that night, and of course, they'll be autographed and auctioned off. Snag your favorite player June 10th and then run it back on the 11th. It's Salute to Corn Night, presented by the Nebraska Corn Board. It's a celebration of all things corn. Corn on the jerseys, corn in the stands. Trust me, this game will be amazing. See you there.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes, that's awesome.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Coach Schmidt and Elijah Herbel, and he has been a fan of the world champ Golden State Warriors back to the 60s. That's not a new lid, that's a vintage lid. We welcome in Mr. Husker football historian, author, Hall of Famer with Hail Varsity, Mike Babcock at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, where'd you get that hat? That is a bright yellow. That's canary yellow, brother. That looks good.
Yeah, I think I ordered it online somewhere a long time ago. I'd pull it out. I have another one that's it's blue and it says 5 NBA championships, so that would be changed by now. But,
I love that. Does it have the? Does it have Mitch Richmond or Mullen on the back of the lid you're wearing now?
No. It could, Nate Thurman. No. Doesn't have that.
Well, it's interesting. We're diving into the logic behind. Well, they're due, aren't they? Talking about Nebraska football and some of the turnover numbers. Tom Fornelli, CBS Sports, is looking at Nebraska's win total. He does not have a lot of faith in Nebraska. He says the wins for Nebraska this year, let's count them: Northwestern, North Dakota, Georgia Southern, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota. Nebraska does get to 6. 6 means you're not home for the holidays, but if you're a Nebraska fan and you get to 6, you'll take it. But man, you want one against kind of the big 2, and I guess we can say big 3 in the West. With the way things have gone, Mike, against Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa the last few years.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. I've seen people that think that Nebraska is going to win its first 9 games, which I think is unrealistic. But the concept of I agree with Vic. Was it Vic?
Vic from Denver.
Yeah, Vic from Denver. I agree with him. There's nothing, has nothing to do with the do. You have to step up and make it happen. And the thing that would be concerning, I think, is that we're looking at last season and how that defense played and how close Nebraska was to those games, one-score games, turn it around. But now that defense has to be rebuilt to some extent as well. So now you've got the defense you got to find some guys up front that have to step up and be comfortable and get the job done. You've got the offensive line that's got to be that's got to step up and establish some things. You've got to identify a running back, and from a group of really good ones, we've talked about that. There are just so many questions about, and that isn't even including special teams. I mean, special teams has got to get better, and you're right. It'd be nice if DeMornay Personnel had another season of eligibility with the Huskers that he could just stick around and maybe Tommy Armstrong could throw one of those Hail Mary passes or whatever instead of.
Dude, I'd take Tommy had a really good career in Lincoln, underrated thrower, really good mobile guy at quarterback. I'd take Tommy at quarterback in 2 seconds. And plug him in.
I would too. And Deontay in the secondary. You got, but it's some of it is what most programs. If you're Kansas State and you got Adrian Martinez comes down there, I'm sure that Kansas State's talking about the same kinds of things that Nebraska's talking about. Northwestern's talking about the same things that Nebraska's talking about. Iowa's talking about the same. Every program at this time of year is talking about, well, if we can get this together, we can be successful. And Nebraska just has not had in recent seasons anything, a basis for saying, we're going to get over that line and we're going to be back to where we once were. And most of the young fans, they don't even remember what that was. The guys that are being recruited, they don't remember what that was. We do, because we saw some of it. I saw a lot of it, but I can't look at this upcoming season in that context, is what I'm saying.
Mike Babcock's with us from Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com, at MD Babs on Twitter is where you follow him. Babbers will be at the yearbook release party tomorrow night up in La Vista. That's at the Hail Varsity Club. You're invited up there for that. Great festivities. We'll be on the air 4 to 6, and then the party and autograph sessions 6 to 8. So log on, hailvarsityclub.com. Get a seat. Come say hi. Come hungry. Come thirsty. Mike, it's interesting to take the good from last year, like you were talking about, the defense, and just hope to transport it for a year, even though it's not the same thing coming back. You have some pieces of that in a Garrett Nelson, in a Caleb Tanner, in a Ty Robinson, in two really good inside backers in Henrich and Reimers. And then you've got Farmer, who has been an impact guy when he's been called upon. But there's some of those newer pieces that you're going to ask a lot of, be it an O'Shawn or a Wynn or a Drew. You need another body on the inside because both those inside kids played so many snaps and performed, but they also played banged up quite a bit. And then the secondary, you're also looking to replace a Cam Taylor-Britt and that do everything in JoJo. Do you like Nebraska's candidates? I think it's a big ask to replicate the level of play that Cam Taylor-Britt and JoJo Doman performed at, but I think you can get solid performances to where you're not weak at those spots. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it is good that you've got guys coming back from that defense because they understand. You got to believe in yourself, and you've got guys that do that, and you've got a great leader in Garrett Nelson. I mean, he's a very enthusiastic. I mean, he's made the steps. He's done the kinds of things that you've talked about. He's started out. He had some issues but he was in there. He was always hustling. He's always going 100 miles an hour, giving everything he had. And now I think he's at all conference level. And he understands. He's leadership. You got the inside linebackers. You've got guys that have gone through it and understand and can provide that. The people that are coming in or the people that are going to try to fit into the system. The one thing that I wonder, whether it's Nebraska or any place, is, again, how do guys who come in from the transfer portal, how quickly can they assimilate? How quickly can they understand and be a part of what needs to be done in order to be successful? That's the thing that's difficult for me to understand. How is that going to fit in?
Well, Mike, even despite all this turnover, I feel like among Husker Nation, there is more confidence in the defense than in the offense. And I think part of that is because of the Eric Chenander effect. You look at the next man up mentality the defense had last year, where Braxton Clark would step up and give good minutes in that secondary. And you had Chris Kolarovich, who stepped up and provided good snaps whenever either Henrich or Reimer went down. And I think that's kind of why there is so much confidence in the defense. It's less so the guys that are being brought in to come and fill places, and more what Eric Chenander's been able to do with his defense over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I give Chenander a lot of credit, and the fact that when changes were made in the coaching staff, they weren't made on defense, they were made on offense. So you've got that continuity of the coaches. And I think that's really important. That's going to be one of the things too, is to look at how does that happen on offense when you've got a bunch of new coaches. Now I know you've gone through spring, you'll have fall camp, and the players are learning how to relate to these coaches, but it's a significant change. And same way with special teams. Now you got a special teams coach just strictly dedicated to that. How is that going to make a difference? Certainly hope so, because that's been an area that has been a problem for a while. And you've got to, it's literally is 1/3 of the game. You've got to have some success on special teams in order to get this thing to where you feel like what you're due is going to happen.
Mike Babcock's with us, Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com, the yearbook release party tomorrow night at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. Come see us. Come say hi. Autograph session with some former Huskers, 6 to 8. Radio show there, 4 to 6 to get you kicked off. So 4 hours of fun. Babbers, as we wind down, I know you have just an incredible feature coming up in the yearbook with Barrett Ruud. Grateful Dead, the topic. A playlist exists. That's incredible. Some other things that folks, you can kind of tease for folks, if you don't mind, with the yearbook as that'll be released. And I mean, we're almost here. We're almost July, and what is it? 65 days, 66 days till kickoff. As again, we're referencing Shawshank Redemption while we're just marking off another day till we get released, so to speak.
Yeah, I like the way Brandon Vogel has approached the capsules on the opponents. And that includes all the teams in the Big Ten and Nebraska's non-conference opponents as well. He's got a unique way of looking at that. That's good. And speaking of unique, Jacob, and obviously Garrett Nelson, he's a great subject for the cover of the magazine. But Jacob Padilla has I think it's really interesting. Some Huskers did a charity basketball game, and they played three different teams in this thing. And Jacob evaluates each of the Nebraska players, and you know how Jacob is with basketball.
All over it.
And it's really he doesn't. I told him after I read it, I was going through and editing, and I told him, I said, it's going to be difficult to get any one-on-one interviews with some of these guys because you're pretty harsh on your evaluation of them as basketball players. It's really unique kind of a thing.
Pass up the shot, pass and find the open man, right?
Yeah, it's there's a little mugshot of the player, and then there's there's Jacob, and he doesn't pull any punches on his evaluation of players, and he's such a knowledgeable basketball person anyway. That's really interesting. And then we've got other everything in there is I think is a special kind of thing. That Greg's feature on Applewhite and Steve did the. Oh geez, now I'm drawing a blank on the player that he did the focus on Quentin Newsom.
Okay.
It's just from front to back. It's really a nice, I think, way to prepare for the season.
And Mike, you got to give yourself some credit here too. I texted some of my friends; they were off at the Dead and Company show in Boulder this week, and I said, "You got to check out Mike's story on Barrett Root, how much he loves the Grateful Dead," and they all wanted a copy.
It's really, I think we said this before, but Barrett has he has 500 CDs, from concerts, Grateful Dead concerts. And when he bought his car, he had to have a CD player installed because they don't put them in there, so he could listen to those things.
Mike Babcock with his Babbers. We will see you tomorrow night, bud. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Be safe.
Calling all soccer fans. Union Omaha is back home after an unbelievable showing in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup round of 16. An upset over Minnesota United? That's our team. So join them when they come home May 28th for Educational Outreach Night, presented by Bellevue University. The Owls will face Northern Colorado Hailstorm FC, and after a couple of road matches, will come back on June 18th to face Greenville Triumph SC. It's also Pride Night. We'll see you there.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We will get an Avs Lightning breakdown from one Elijah Herbel. He is not wearing any Avs gear tonight. So I don't know if he's nervous about things going 2-2 or not. We'll get there in a minute. We'll talk recruiting in 20 minutes or so with Greg Smith and then Charlie McBride next hour. So Nebraska right now, you have some real work going on the recruiting trail. You've got Sia from Utah, where Nebraska is fighting Virginia for him. You have Dontravius Braswell at running back. South Carolina, Louisville, Nebraska. That's the three-team race. Malachi Coleman, Nebraska, Michigan is the arm wrestling match right there. O'Marion Miller, commit to LSU for a time, was recently in Lincoln as he is considering Nebraska. Maverick Noonan versus it's Nebraska v. Stanford there. You have Tuioti that did his official at Oregon, tweeted out some Oregon stuff today. So it's between Nebraska and Oregon. Of course, Dad's at Oregon. Mario Buford, Arkansas and Nebraska. Of course, Buford's brother is here. Davon Hall, the stud out of Bell West. It's Nebraska, Iowa. And then Navario Sankey, he's out of Brandon, South Dakota. I think Nebraska is in it with South Dakota State. I mean, the Jacks are up there. He's offensive lineman. I think Riley Sheriff, does that sound right? He might have been a Brandon, South Dakota guy that ended up at Iowa. Longtime NFL tackle, high-level player, three monster contracts. He was supposed to be in on Callahan in 2007, ended up going to Iowa. But that's kind of where we're at. Nebraska, of course, getting a pretty big-time commitment yesterday out of Colorado.
Yeah, the inside linebacker you're referring to there. And what was that sheriff's name?
It's Riley, I think.
Is it Brandon?
I think there's a Brandon and a Riley. I don't know. He's played a lot of different spots and has a lot of pheasant hunting land in South Dakota. Hayden Moore, though, pretty big-time linebacker get for Nebraska. We'll know more from Greg Smith on him here as he spoke with Moore yesterday.
Now, I'm curious to ask Greg, I mean, really just what's happening along the offensive line and the defensive line, because Nebraska did well in the transfer portal in both of those spots, but hasn't necessarily translated to recruiting. We did have Sam Sledge in the class, as well as, why am I drawing a blank on the name? We just talked to him like 2 weeks ago. The 2 weeks ago, offensive lineman, Scottsbluff.
Oh, yeah. Brock
Knudsen. My apologies, but Nebraska's done well there. I'm kind of curious what else is going to be coming down through the pipeline, because as we've heard so many times before, you can't build up a team, let alone an offense line or a defense line, just through transfer portal guys. Really got to do that work in the recruiting world. So I'm curious to see what Nebraska's doing there.
It's all right. You just got to get those guys. And listen, not every lineman's going to hit. That's so key to be able to supplement through the walk-on program or through JUCO or now through the portal. You got to have guys that eventually develop and contribute. And you want contributors to turn to starters. You want starters to turn into all-conference or fringe, but be solid. I mean, we'd kill for another guy in another year from a guy like Ben Stilley, right? Local product that played athletically enough on the outside and then put on some weight and was vicious and so dependable and good on the inside. It's easier said than done. And you see it. You see struggles. Why was Clemson bad last year? Air quote, bad for them. Because they're playing a bunch of redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores. It's just not feasible to reload every year. You're going to have a step back year, and you pray your step back year's 10-3, second in the league.
And especially in the Big Ten, what you need along those lines of scrimmage is guys who are NFL type players. Guys who, they might not be NFL type players now, but 2 years down the road, they're going to be an NFL prospect, a guy who's going to hear his name called at the draft. That's what you need in the Big Ten, just because of what the other teams have. You got to have that, and really the odds that you find one of those guys in the transfer portal are low, because the guys who are already NFL guys, what point do they have in transferring? There's a couple exceptions, obviously, but offensive line is one of the bigger places in the transfer portal where you're going to struggle to find real day one type of talent to step in and make a contribution for you, especially in a conference like the Big Ten. So that's why you got to have wins in the recruiting world along those offensive and defensive lines.
Talk to me about game number 4 tonight in the Stanley Cup Finals. To be on ABC tonight, so I will check some of that out. Avs lead 2-1. You know, it was going to come back to earth a little bit for the Avs after the touchdown shutout against the Lightning. Colorado minus 110 tonight is, we'll see. You've got an incredible goaltender that has been peppered and bludgeoned, quite honestly, by the Avs offense. The Lightning, their problem is offense. I mean, it's been offense, and you need a lot of offense to beat the Avs. You're not going to win games 2-1 or 3-1 even against Colorado. You're going to need to put 4 or 5 goals up, and you got shut out because it was, no pun intended, but it was just an avalanche of what they did offensively. When it comes to, they did with the penalty. With the penalty minutes, the Avs were really good. They took advantage early on, got momentum. They were good on the net with the offensive putbacks. Mm-hmm. A couple of the scores there. I mean, those quick follow-up second, third shots when there's a flurry around the goal, and then even when it comes to some of their passing and the breakaways. I mean, the Avs were able to flex all they wanted offensively on an incredible goalie. You feeling good, or does this thing get tied tonight?
I'm feeling pretty solid. Nikita Kucherov is going to be playing tonight for the Tampa Bay Lightning, even though he's got a little bit banged up last game. That's a
Two of their studs are hurt, but they're playing.
It's a storyline to watch. Yeah, Nikita Kucherov and Nick Paul. Braden Point remains out. That would be huge if they can get him back this series. As for the Avalanche, it looks like Nazem Kadri is in line to get at least some playing time tonight. Unsure if it's going to be up to his usual standards, but he was hurt against Edmonton, had wrist surgery, and is now going to be back in the lineup. Darcy Kemper, after a bad Game 3, is also going to be back in net. That's a storyline to watch as well. Might be a shorter leash, but I feel good about the Avalanche. Their power play has been great. Their penalty kill has been really good as well, and if they can generate some more penalties and get some more power play opportunities tonight, I give them a great chance to win, just because Tampa Bay is not going to have that conversion rate that they had last game all series.
Well, you have McKinnon, too, trying to pull out his own scoring drought. We'll wind down hour 1. It's Hail Varsity.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Greg Smith on deck to talk some Cruton with us. Excited to hear from Greg, and also Mr. Blackshirt Charlie McBride will be with us. A Jock Doc with Dr. Doug Tavis. What's the word on Manny Machado? It was awesome to see him in Colorado. I about said Mile High at Coors. See him at Coors was awesome. He went yard that game, and then he jacked his ankle the day after. We're going to blame Junior on that, some sort of hex. Reminder to get buckled up, hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. The driver has one job, to drive. This message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So when you watch hockey, do you get into that mode, Elijah, like a lot of Nebraska fans do, where you kind of lock yourself? There's one of two ways to watch. You're in a big group, and you love it. There's beer, there's peanuts, there's munchies, and everyone's having a good old time. Or do you get to that dark side where there is some extended passion, things may break, and you have to go watch quietly, or not quietly, but at least isolated by yourself because you're afraid that others may be harmed?
It goes both ways.
Both stages.
It depends on the pressure around the game. So for game one, I made sure to watch that game solo because I knew there'd be stress. Game 3 the other night, I knew if the Avs lose this one, it's on the road, it's okay. I decided to watch that one with friends. And I'll actually be locked here in the studios here tonight for a Salt Dogs
game. So it's on your phone.
I'll pull it up on the computer.
Okay.
I got the YouTube TV. I'll pull it up, and whenever I have to do some scoreboard updates for the Salt Dogs baseball games,
you'll lead with hockey.
They're just going to get a big dose of hockey.
Going around the league, NHL Stanley Cup Finals, Avs 4, Lightning 1. Back to you.
Yeah. It's actually fun. Last week, the overtime game, I was actually locked in here as well, and whenever the Avs pulled that thing out in overtime, I was the only person here, so I was just running up and down the halls like.
Were you really?
Yeah, no joke.
Awesome, man.
No joke. I couldn't contain my happiness because we're in the bottom of the 7th inning. I got through my scoreboard update, and I knew. Got the speakers loud enough. I'll know if we'll go to an inning, but I'll just a break. I'll just run up and down the halls for a second and get all my joy out. So it was a good night last week. Hoping for another good night tonight. And if the Avs are up 3-1, maybe we'll go back for Game 5 to watch with some friends, and hopefully I can revel in the Avs lifting the Stanley Cup with some friends. If it goes to 2-2, you better believe I'm watching Game 5 solo.
So when it comes to the series, forgive me, is it 2-1
right now? The Avs are on top.
No, I know the breakdown, but is it 2-2, 1-1-1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they actually went to that model before the NBA did, where the NBA was stuck for a long time doing the 2-3-2.
Yeah.
Which was brutal, a terrible way to do playoff series in my humble opinion. Yeah, the hockey is the 2-2-1-1-1. So 2 games here in Tampa Bay. This is the second game in Tampa Bay. Back in Denver for Game 5, and then Game 7 will be in Denver as well. They
win tonight. You're hopping a train, aren't you?
I'll hop on a train for the parade ceremony because you don't have to buy tickets for the parade.
You just show up.
You just show up. I still can't afford those Stanley Cup Finals.
To their version of the rail yard, which was jam. I mean, we didn't end up going down to that market area.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed at Jackson's rooftop and kept pouring Coors. But checking it out, seeing some pictures, I mean, we're talking 30,000 jammed in there to watch their giant cube.
Yep.
And it was really cool. Mm-hmm. It was really awesome. We will spend some time, get you caught up on the recruiting front with Greg Smith, Charlie McBride, all happening next hour with Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Schmitty. Want to tell you about a fantastic opportunity to work for a rapidly growing company that also enjoys the benefits earned with having competitive, stable history of work over 20 years. FSC. The FSC Edge. It's a leading technology innovator serving governmental agencies. Expert services helping worldwide patent offices meet strict processing and publishing timelines while delivering exceptional quality. They support some of the world's largest patent offices throughout the U.S. and Europe. That includes the European Patent Office, the German Patent and Trademark Office, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. The only group of companies worldwide to provide such support to all three of these agencies. Working at FSC, you have a chance to work with fun people with great attitudes and learn about patents. You're not on the phone. You're not customer facing. It's casual dress. And the work environment, it's a new environment with over $2 million in improvements. You have access to generous benefits packages, company support for health and wellness, and you do impactful work on a national scale. Make a difference. Their team's constantly growing, and they're always looking for new people to join their mission. Check out what's available today at jobs@fsc.com.
Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. Hour 2 kicking off with recruiting insider Greg Smith. Greg Smith will be at the Hail Varsity Club tomorrow. We are kicking things off 4 to 6, a road show with Hail Varsity. Then some former Huskers going to be by and a lot of staff with Hail Varsity Magazine. And Greg, man, it's going to be awesome to see you up at the club. A lot of recruiting news to get into. I'm sure the readers will stop by and maybe even ask for a signature next to DPE, Tommy Armstrong, and whoever else is there. I tell you what, pretty big release party tomorrow night for the yearbook. Before we get into recruiting, who did you kind of focus in on? What was your feature? You had a lot to do in the yearbook, bud. Let's start there with what you nailed down.
Yeah, really exciting time with that launch party for the yearbook at the Hail Varsity Club tomorrow. Really excited about that. Come say hello, come meet us. I don't know if you quite want my autograph next to those guys, but if you feel so inclined, that's fine too. I won't judge you too hard. Brian Applewhite is who I focused in on for this year's yearbook, and so what interested me about him, and this is, man, I started working on this really back during spring football, and really it started during his initial roundtable. I sat with him during that assistant deal and was really struck by just his passion for football, just the way that he explains things and how he just seemed to quickly relate to everyone, right? And so I kind of had the idea, like, let's go inside of that a little bit and see what kind of makes him tick. And what I found is that it's really a love for learning, education, and teaching that really has driven his coaching style and his ability to pick things up at all of the stops that he's been at throughout his career. He's had a lot of success, but he's also taken things from each of those stops to continue to mold himself into a better coach.
He has been such a tremendous asset to whatever program he's been with. I think of what type of player you got to be for the great Joe Glenn, and that's absolutely, both of those guys are, one and the same with, the first coaching gig that Coach Applewhite got being with Joe Glenn, and of course playing for Joe, winning some national championships at Northern Colorado. And I was right there with you as far as the wow factor with Brian Applewhite, and he is really, he's a star. He's a star position coach, but Greg, is it fair to say I think he's a star as a recruiter?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been the thing that it's been funny to see this unfold as kind of I've had this story in my pocket and been working on it, to see the kind of the perception of Brian Applewhite change, right? And I kind of understand how we got here, right? When you have Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush come full-time on the staff, they get a lot of the attention, and rightfully so, because of their resumes. But, oh, by the way, you had Brian Applewhite that was just quietly doing work during those contact periods and now during this official visit time, where, he comes to find out he's got a lot of connections down in Texas. He's got a lot of connections in Louisiana. A lot of those kids that, you see Mickey Joseph recruiting, Brian Applewhite also has a hand in that because he's so well connected and respected down there. I think Nebraska got a really good, fantastic coach and a very good recruiter as well in Applewhite.
Greg Smith with us talking Hail Varsity Yearbook and also recruiting at Greg Smith HV on Twitter. Straight Up Breakdown is his podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Is it fair to say that Applewhite is as big an asset as Nebraska's had in Texas since Tim Beck?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that that's fair. And when you spend as much time down there as he has, you're going to have those connections, and why that's so important. And it kind of goes back to why a part of the reason why Tim Beck was so good down in Texas is being a former Texas high school coach down there. He had the respect of the other coaches. You know that you just don't do work down in Texas in high school recruiting if you don't have the respect of the high school coaches. It's a really close-knit community of coaches as well, even with how big that state is. And Applewhite definitely commands that respect. Going back to multiple stops, but definitely his time at TCU, where, he told me that, they're looking for kids at TCU that, were not necessarily had the big name on their chest, the school they were coming from. They were looking at projecting guys, and obviously had a great track record with Gary Patterson there, and I think that earned you a lot of respect on the recruiting trail.
Greg, Nebraska able to get to Colorado for the latest commit. Hayden Moore, linebacker, 6'3", 210. Guy was a demon as a junior, over 111 tackles, 16 and a half DFLs. That includes quite a few sacks. What's his comp? Who does he remind you of that's either in or been in the Nebraska program?
He reminds me a little bit of Nick Henrich, a guy that was piling up tackles at Omaha Burke, and when healthy has done the same thing in Nebraska, kind of a guy that's a plus athlete at the inside linebacker spot. And I know that, Hayden talks to me about the ability to play a couple of sports at Nebraska. He's also a standout baseball player. He's got a 90-plus mile-per-hour fastball, so that'll get you some looks as well. And he does want the opportunity to do that, but that is not the end of the world if he ends up focusing on football. But I think that he's a really good get in a border state that Nebraska, I think, needs to be able to just kind of reach over into every cycle and grab a guy or two, because Colorado, the University of Colorado, seems to not be able to really keep those guys home. So Nebraska might as well reach over and grab a couple.
Nebraska picking up the linebacker commit, Greg. But, Greg, he wasn't the linebacker we were talking about when we had you on the show last week. We were talking about Phil Picotti. So I'm kind of wondering what this commitment means for the recruitment of Phil Picotti. Is that going to be a back burner guy now, or is he still a priority?
No, I wouldn't call him a back burner. I think he's definitely a priority, but it's going to be interesting now because you've got a situation where Phil has got a lot of options. All of these guys do too. You got Dylan Rogers out of Texas, who also, looking at Texas, looking at Missouri, and he was here this past weekend, along with Hayden Moore, who was starting to get some real looks, who got an offer from Iowa and Michigan here recently, so Nebraska did a good job to land him before that really took off. But no, I don't think that Phil is on the back burner. I think at this point, Nebraska's looking at taking one more inside linebacker, and I would count on it being either Phil Picotti or Dylan Rogers, who was just here. We'll see if they can get Rogers to move up his timeline. I think he initially wanted to wait until into the season to make a decision, but once guys start snatching up spots, and you're seeing that all over the country, it seems like there's been a huge run of recruitments this week, because that game of musical chairs speeds up a little bit. That
music does tend to slow, right, because of the portal, and it's been a trickle down, not just at quarterback, but some key spots. They're all key spots in the world of recruiting, but it used to be, do you go JUCO or do you go high school? Now it's, do you look to the portal, then do you look to JUCO, then do you look to high school? You got to build your program, obviously, through high school, but from a supplementation standpoint, you've got some guys that are already watered, you know what I mean, compared to the development phase. What is Hayden's strength, in your opinion, from a film standpoint?
Yeah, I think he's a good sideline-to-sideline player. He's got good instincts. He flies for the football as well. You don't, pick up 111 tackles or so, in high school without being able to really have good reads and have good instincts and make good plays on the football. And so those are the things I really like about him. But I think that him and Barrett Ruud have a really solid relationship. Barrett Ruud doing a really solid job with those linebackers that were in town this weekend, and he's, really kind of stepped up his game on the recruiting trail as well.
Greg Smith with us, few minutes, Hail Varsity Radio at Greg Smith HV, and of course the yearbook release party tomorrow at the Hail Varsity Club. Come see us up in La Vista. Great food and drink. Some ex-Huskers going to be there, and all of the Hail Varsity staff. Should be a lot of fun. Some of the other names that kind of wowed you touched on Dylan Rogers. How's Ryan Robinson grab you? Touch on Trayshawn Wilson. A couple of other guys. I know 17 in all came in last weekend.
Yeah, it's been a really busy time for Nebraska football recruiting, and that's kind of an understatement, right? I think that both cornerbacks, Robinson and Wilson, both had good weekends. I think that they're a little bit, Wilson is a little bit different than some of the other defensive backs that Travis Fisher has really recruited hard here at his time in Nebraska. He's about 5'9", and he's smaller, but boy, he's got some speed on him. And then Ryan Rodgers is a kid from Texas that Nebraska really likes quite a bit, and he seemed to have a really good weekend as well. I do think that they're going to add one more defensive back to go along with Dwight Boodle, who's already in the class, who was also here this weekend, who definitely had his peer recruiting hat on. We'll just have to see kind of where things land because, Travis Fisher always has an ace or two up his sleeve.
Greg, tell us a little about the guys that are going to be coming up here in this upcoming weekend. I'm seeing a couple guys that could be playing along that defensive front. Cameron Leonard from IMG Academy. I'm also seeing Trey Wilson and Dylan Fontes. Do I have my names right here? And who else could be coming this weekend?
So I know for sure that Cameron Lenhart is coming this weekend from IMG because he told me that last week. The other two, I'm still trying to figure out what's happening there. The thing about this coming weekend is that it's going to kind of be fluid, and I think it's going to be a smaller weekend. Well, I know it's going to be a smaller weekend than the last couple, in part because, and part of it is a good thing. Part of it is that Nebraska has had a real good success with these early recruiting visits that they've had, and I think that they are in line to get more commitments from guys that have already visited. The other thing is I do think that you're right about the defensive linemen coming in because I think that they want to focus in on a need, which is defensive line needs to be restocked. I think after we saw what happened kind of this offseason with them having to go into the portal, we're a little unsure about the depth and the youth in that room, so you need to continue to add guys. Riley Van Poppel was a really good first start for that room, but they need one or two more coming up. And Cameron Lenhart, by the way, a four-star kid out of IMG Academy, would be a really nice get. The Huskers getting a real good prospect on campus to make their move with this weekend. Nebraska
has Brock Bando from IMG, and that's really been the extent. That's typically where Clemson will go, Georgia will go, the U. Who else am I leaving out? Ohio State's been really good, and Michigan too. Michigan's been pretty big in IMG, but who is Nebraska's in down there? Is it Mickey? Is it Bush? Or is it kind of a collaboration?
I would assume that it's a collaboration. That's a great question. I'll have to find that out for sure, but I would assume that it's a collaboration, and maybe a guy like Travis Fisher is involved with that being, with the school being down in Florida. But some of that too is that guys come from all over the country to go to that school, so you just never know if a Husker coach has a connection with his former high school coach or anything like that. Which I think that kind of trickiness of that situation is what tends to make it difficult for Nebraska. And then you just get the who's who of college football coming in and trying to pluck guys out of there.
Greg, gonna switch gears as we're 65 days away from Dublin, and because the countdown is going on, we're Andy Dufresne here, marking off another day on the old calendar till we kick off. Who's the key guy for you on the defensive side of the ball for Nebraska?
Boy, that's a tough one because my initial thought is O'Shawn Mathis. But Ty Robinson is someone that, we kind of pencil in as a guy who could be an all Big Ten level player, but we haven't seen that consistently from him. So I kind of think of it as, listen, if this guy were to elevate his game, who has the biggest impact on the defense? And I think that's Ty, especially with some of the concerns I have about their run defense going into the season. So I'm going to go Ty Robinson.
Is it Casey for you on offense?
Yeah. I feel like it has to be the quarterback. If you exclude quarterback, it's got to be an offensive lineman from me, and maybe Bryce Benhart, who just fascinates me to see if he can return to his kind of freshman year form, and even take a couple steps forward from there. Because if he can hold down that right tackle spot, I think that there's a domino effect on that offensive line that could be really positive.
Greg, in the same vein, can you give me a position or position group on each side of the ball where you're a little dubious going into this season? It's wait and see mode before you buy the stock.
Yeah, I think that. Well, boy, it's tough. Offensive line would probably still be the pick for me. on the offense. I just want to see it happen. I think that they've got plenty to work with in that group. It's whether or not it can all come together and whether or not everyone is healthy up front as well, right? And then on the defensive side, boy, I'm going to probably stay on the line of scrimmage and say that defensive line. I've mentioned Ty Robinson, how important he is, and you've got to keep him healthy as well. But I need to see those guys in that rotation up front, including the new incoming transfers, be able to do it in the Big Ten and do it on a consistent basis. The lines of scrimmage are just going to be huge for Nebraska this year.
Okay, tomorrow night, the Lakers get to add to their roster. Who do you want the Lake Show to be drafting?
Boy, I haven't thought about it. We'll have to see, because really all of my focus as it relates to the Lakers has been on getting rid of Russell Westbrook. So I don't care who they draft as long as they figure out a way to get old number 0 out of town. Like, I'm ready for that.
Would you ship Russell for Kyrie?
I would begrudgingly do that with a heavy sigh, but I'm telling you that the stress I would have relying on Kyrie and Anthony Davis to show up to work on a consistent basis is already rises my blood pressure.
Old Anthony Davis, pair him up with Kyrie.
Yeah,
and the question for me is, can you have LeBron James and Kyrie Irving work together again? It worked for a couple years in Cleveland, but that relationship got pretty strained by the end.
Yeah, it did, but I think Kyrie's might be ready to admit that mistake. Like, I do think that there's some patchwork that can be done there. But it's funny, man. Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving's played 103 regular season games so far in his time with Brooklyn. Over that same span, Anthony Davis 138. So neither of them exactly available. I think that's out of 200 and something, by the way. Neither of them are available enough.
I think you call Vlade and Big Game James and see if they got any more minutes left in them.
Well, you got to do something, right? The window is rapidly closing on one LeBron James.
Give me the Marlboro Man back. Greg Smith with us, recruiting insider, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Hail Varsity Yearbook Party tomorrow night. Come see us at the Hail Varsity Club, La Vista, where you'll find us. Greg, thanks for the time.
Hey, thank you always. You guys have a good one. See you tomorrow.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. We say hi to Mr. Blackshirt. Charlie McBride joins us. Coach, how you dealing with the heat up there?
Well, I don't know, but my grandson's from Arizona, and they sent him home. He's working over at the golf course cutting weeds, and they sent him home yesterday, and he couldn't believe it. They said it was too hot to work. And he's from Arizona. He said, you don't know what hot is, So he said the bad thing about it is I got 2 hours cut on my pay. Well, he didn't believe it, but that's what happened.
Well, it's better safe than sorry. So this time of year, were you more of a fisherman? Are you more of a fisherman? Do you still water ski? Did you like water skiing? How would you spend a few moments?
The wind has actually been too bad for anybody to really do anything. I mean, it's been rough, really rough. The weather's been great, and the wind has been just, at the lake, it's been pretty tough. So a lot of people haven't done it. And I had a couple of kids that I recruited and coached up at the University of Wisconsin came by, and they're funny. They brought a bunch of sandwiches from a deli in Chicago. They came up for the day just to talk. I hadn't seen them in, quite a while. So, and they came up spent the day with me.
Well, that sounds fun. And they brought you some Chicago goodness. It sounds like those deli sandwiches.
That's right. from the Italian deli.
Well, that sounds great. Well, Coach, we're not far away from Big Ten Media Days, and then before we know it, fall camp will start, and then Hello Ireland is here. And I wanted to dive into a couple of topics. One, and this was an interesting ESPN article. What a good college football program does to go from good to great or elite. And I wanted to get your thoughts on the really good years you had in Lincoln, and then what made it elite, going from 10-2, which was elite in college football, to really, really good. How did you guys even get better than you were, if that makes sense, to go get those championships? What was the difference between 10-2, 11-1, and undefeated?
Well, a lot of times it's the age of the players that have been around. It's the experience. It's the difference. A lot of the kids that never. They always. I always told them, don't ever say anything you got to take back. So, they were pretty quiet about people trying to maybe make them sound better than they were. At the time. And, they just played. I mean, it wasn't a matter of how good you were or anything like that. They just played together so well. There was always one guy that's, on a list to be, get awards and stuff like that. But they never talked about it. They never paid much attention to any of that stuff. And, they all were there when they were supposed to be there, working out and doing stuff like that. And so I think that was something that they felt, obligated to do, to keep up the tradition of winning and getting better. I think that's always been in everything, that I think a good team doesn't stay with the status quo. Usually if you don't try to get better, then you usually aren't going to get better, and you're going to get beat.
Always trying to be better. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Monday with Charlie. Wednesday, we were in Colorado, Coach, for baseball this weekend, and we were down in good old, not Durango, but Castle Rock. And one of my dad's favorite Huskers was Mike Knox from Castle Rock.
Right. That's right. Mike was really an interesting kid. We of course, coming from Colorado, he knows pretty much of the background of the school, and apparently I don't know how hard they recruited him, really? But he happened to be on the trip that we played as a freshman, and what I remember, they scored on a kickoff,
okay,
and then we got the ball and fumbled, and it was down near the goal line, and they got the ball and scored again, 14-0, and I said something to the effect, "We're going to get our kicked," and Mike was standing behind me, and Mike turned around and said, "Coach," he said, "we're not going to get our butts kicked." He said, "This is Colorado." It was won like 50-something to 14. I don't know what it was, but it was, but that's, here out of a freshman to hear that, it was kind of interesting. And Mike was always, really a good player. And, the other guy that came from Colorado was Mark Mumford. And they didn't, it seemed like, if I remember right, they really didn't recruit them that hard. And boy, they both of them were really good linebackers.
Man, they played great football for you. Speaking with the Colorado theme, staying with the Colorado theme, I was looking at some facts and numbers that are around, because Memorial Stadium turns 100 this year. And against Colorado in 1983, the scoring explosion scored 48 points in about 3 minutes and 40 seconds of game time. You were on the sidelines for that. I think you had a defensive score mixed in as well. But did you ever think you'd see something like that where you put up half 100 in a 4-minute period? I mean, it was like a 2-point ball game at halftime, and then all of a sudden the offense, the defense, everyone got going against the Buffs.
Yeah, that's just one of those things in sports that happens. I mean, everything for a team goes wrong, and it just snowballs. Mm-hmm. And we've seen a little bit of that ourselves. But, I think the thing is at that time, our players really believed in themselves. And I think that first half was, kind of a lesson to them that they, don't think you're better than you. You've got to play every time. You can't think you're, great or doing something like that. You just can't do it because, and I know Christian was always one that, said if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Well, they came in and said they were the best and had probably gotten their draw a little bit, and didn't work so well that time. I mean, they were a good football team, though. I mean, they always were during that period of time. They were a tough team to play.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the 94 game against Colorado, and they came in unbeaten, and I don't know if it was you or somebody said that there were pipe cutters going to dismantle the pipeline or something, and the offensive line got ticked off about that.
Yeah, that's the one. They wore black shirts, and they were gonna show them who was the real black shirts. That was their theme for the day. They were going to show them who the real black shirts were, and that went over like a lead balloon, really.
Well, in that game, you guys made Cordell Stewart the main ball carrier, didn't you? You took Salam out of it on the option. Right.
Well, I'm not sure that I don't remember. I know I think a couple of times he dropped the ball. I don't know. I know that he didn't play like he was, written up to be, and that particular game. And sometimes players, that just happens. They don't play well, or in practice, I'm sure that we talked about, not letting him run the ball, and that's a big thing. I think if you harp on that all week, usually those backs have a tough time, doing it when their name comes up in practice all the time. So that was one of those games where I think the players said, well, we've heard enough, and and so it was probably a little bit of they probably motivated our guys probably more than we could.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we'll let you get out and enjoy some family, but real quick, wanted a thought here with Nebraska and their offense as we look towards this season. How much quarterback run do you expect or anticipate with Whipple's offense and the quarterbacks you have on the roster? I mean, it's something that's been a big part of Scott's offense since he's been here.
Well, I think with they have a pretty good stable of backs, and I think that maybe that'll cut out a little bit of the possibility that the quarterback is going to run with the ball. If you come up with a few backs that are really tough, the quarterback doesn't really need to run the football. You can save him, from any kind of banging around or anything like that. But I would think that that he's gonna run the ball, but I don't know that he's going to run it as much as we saw in the past.
Charlie McBride with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, what do you got going this weekend? Chicken wings and brats?
Well, they're starting this weekend, starting Monday. Next Monday, the whole tribe is coming in. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be 14 and 15 spinning around. I don't know where, but they'll find someplace. And I had one of them that said, "Yeah, I give up, Dad. I'm going to rent a house." And he rented a house in a little town. So, so that's, but they'll all be here. And, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good stories. We'll start fishing a little bit more now because they like that kind of stuff. And we got some kids that are really good with wakeboards and skiing and stuff like that. And we'll have David's bringing his big boat from Arizona. And, he's got a big Supra it only cost about $130,000. So it does pull skiers.
I would say that's pretty good. Coach, enjoy it. We'll talk again next week.
Okay. I'll talk to you later. Hey, keep up in that World Series, will you? It's a pretty good one. I've been watching.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back in, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Doug Tavis with us. Dr. Doug, getting enough baseball? How you doing?
Doing good. Enjoying the summertime baseball. It's one of my favorite times of year, of course. My family have been a little bit involved in that.
Just a touch. Just a touch. And, yeah, it is a great time of year. And our athlete tonight is Manny Machado. We saw him Saturday night go yard, really good ball game at Coors, and the Rockies prevailed. But, man, he's having an incredible year. We're talking MVP year with his average and power numbers, and he's always been great at third. But, man, he had a tough day Sunday, Dr. Doug, with trying to hustle one out to first base and stepped wrong on the bag and went down like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that, when you think about baseball, it's one of the spots where you do see injuries to the lower extremities. You're going hard to first base. You kind of hit that base awkwardly, but you're not slowing down at all with any kind of intention to round the base or anything. You're just kind of run through it, and you'll see ACL tears. You'll see ankle sprains, all sorts of kind of crazy stuff happen because of that just sudden shift in the weight as you're going over the top of the bag.
Well, Manny sprained that left ankle and was able to kind of hobble off the field with his arms around a couple of teammates. Some purple and blue is what the description is for that ankle. They think could stay off the IL. But Dr. Doug, let's touch on some of the precautionary exams that they've gone through to make sure it's nothing worse than just a twisted ankle.
Yeah, so this brings up kind of a good overall point, because one of the things that can occur with ankle injuries is that you can get a lot of bleeding from the partial tears of ligaments and still not have a lot of instability. And because of that, you can have players come back with what look like, just horrible injuries and a lot of swelling, a lot of, bruising like that. So what they'll do is typically on physical examination, they're going to just compare that left ankle against his right ankle on a couple of different ways that we test the ligaments. And while that's going to be an uncomfortable exam for him because you're yanking around on him, you can pretty well tell whether or not those ligaments are completely torn or whether they're partial tears. And when we have a question, of course, we can go on and we can do an MRI examination or serial exams, meaning that a few days later reassess what that situation looks like. But it is kind of a good point to bring up that a lot of ankle sprains are, even though they look pretty tough, are able to come back, really pretty quickly.
Dr. Doug Tavis with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Manny Machado is our topic. He's really had to carry the offense with Tatis out much, this first half of the year. And San Diego's been right there or, a half step behind, trading spots with the Dodgers. What's the timeline here, and what's some treatment options right now just moving forward if it is a normal sprain?
Yeah, so they're going to really push the pressure on that ankle to get the fluid out of it. There's a device that we use a lot in sports medicine. It's called a game-ready device. It's one of many different types of compression icing machines that we've got available. And when we put those on, we can really milk that swelling out of the ankle. And so that's a big part of what's going on right now. They'll use a boot typically in order to immobilize the ankle just because it's going to be less painful for him. And likely, as long as his x-rays are normal, which it sounds like they are for him, then it's going to be bearing full weight on it. And we actually kind of like the idea of having him bear full weight on it because we want to have the athlete's ability to sense where his leg is in space to not be diminished. We want him to be able to feel that. After a few days, then it's going to be regaining some range of motion in that ankle. And again, trying to understand the feel of how the ankle is positioned in space. And so we'll have them do things like drawing the ABCs, with their foot as they're sitting because that forces them to move the ankle. We'll put them on a mini tramp or what we would call a wobble board or BAPS board. And what that does is it forces the athlete to respond with his muscles to the change in the position of the ankle and forces them to re-engage that thought of or that feeling of where that foot is in space. And then the last thing we do is to figure out what kind of support we need to put around the ankle as they're trying to come back into playing.
Dr. Doug Tavis with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday, as we're talking Manny Machado. He plays at third, and he's an athletic third baseman. He's not a fire hydrant over there at third. He's able to get to quite a few balls. Any worry about some lingering effects to limit his mobility playing that hot corner?
Yeah, I think the most likely thing you see is just a split second less quickness as he's first coming back. Playing at third, that instant read of the ball, and you've got to make that first move. There could be just a little hesitation to that. And that may allow, some balls that he otherwise would have gotten, to get through. But as good as he is, Gold Glove over there, as good as he is, he's still going to make plays that some other guys aren't going to be able to make.
Dr. Doug, is there any fear of something going wrong if you were to rush this injury back?
That's a good question because the ankle can stay inflamed in the joint at times, and by coming back too quickly, you could have that be a prolonged issue. And so one of the ways that you're trying to avoid that, of course, is adding that immobilization to it so that you support those ligaments. And realistically, if the athlete is able to feel comfortable with their quick movements, feel comfortable with their bounding kinds of movements, with the immobilization like an ankle brace or taping. That support will generally give them, enough support to where they're not going to cause a re-injury or more injury to it. It's just, are they going to delay getting over the whole thing? That's kind of the primary concern.
Dr. Doug, thanks for the time today.
You bet, you guys. You take care.
Like what you hear, high-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Sad day in the NFL as we wind it down. The Goose, one of my favorites, Tony Siragusa, his personality only matched by his, that 700-pound wall of Baltimore, him and Sam Adams, that first Ravens title, 55 years old. The Goose was, he was a riot for part of the NFL broadcast on Fox. They had the Goose box.
See, that's what I remember him from, where he's down on the field in his fur coat.
Yeah, he's pimped out.
Yeah, that's how I honestly, I assumed he was an NFL player, but I never knew anything about his NFL career before that.
He played at Pitt, 1990, went undrafted, tore his ACL, BS'd his way to get a $1,400 signing bonus by Indy. And said, look, I'm a backup long snapper, right? Well, 12 years later, and no doubt a Baltimore Hall of Famer, but was just so good. Was actually friends with him on Facebook somehow. It wasn't a fan account. So one night early in the Facebook era, said, hey, there's Goose. Let's see if he'll be my friend. And never really communicated.
Those early Facebook days were I'm still friends with some random Huskers from way back when, that his little 5th grade me sending out friend requests.
There's a little Elijah pre-mustache. This is a bit of Goose, though. This is pretty good from the world of Twitter, and Goose talking about guys and signing bonuses and earning it.
7th round draft choice? Cut. If he's a rookie, I don't want to know who he is.
When we came in for minicamp and everything, the guys, they're just open. They're just real guys.
Nobody ever gave me anything. When I came into this league, I got a $1,000 signing bonus. Not $12 million, not $5 million, not $400,000. You look at all these guys drafted first round, all this, all that. They're going to come in with their nice cars. Don't park them near me, because I'm going to slam my door open and you're going to have dents all on the side of your car. All right, I have no respect for you until you make the team. And then once you make the team, then, I might talk to you or something. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. He'll get ripped apart. If there's a camera following a rookie around, he's going to get tore. If you survive, then we'll talk.
Fair enough. If you survive, then we'll talk. Tony Siragusa, man, Super Sky Point.
Yeah, I saw the great quote today from Siragusa saying, if I wanted to learn a school song, I would have gone to Notre Dame or Penn State. I want to kill people on the football field. That's why I came to Pitt.
Pride of New Jersey, man. Goose was a Jersey guy. At least that's where he was born, and he fit Harbaugh's team. I think Trev Alberts was on this team in the years that Trev was playing in Indy, but they got to the AFC Championship in '95, and they lost on a Hail Mary to Pittsburgh. But what led Goose from Indy, I always knew him as Baltimore, but what led him to Baltimore was a contract dispute. And then, lo and behold, here's him and Sam Adams, 700 pounds of girth, in the middle. And then there's Ray Lewis to unload on you if you somehow get by those two.
To wrap up his career accomplishments, he also had a small role in The Sopranos.
Yep.
Assumed you
knew that. Yeah, big Sopranos guy. We are on the road tomorrow. Come see us at the Hale Varsity Club in La Vista, just off of 680. And we'll be there 4 to 6. Autograph signing, yearbook party drop tomorrow with Hale Varsity Club.
A Hurrdat Media Production.